Mike Sullivan. Welcome to our show. Our topic this evening will be the usual. It will be a political roundtable discussing some of the issues that have been addressed by the City Council and County Council over the last, say, 6 months. And they seem to never quite fit into what they want to have happen, or they seem to keep coming back and honing the city in one form or another. To discuss these topics are my guests. To my right is Jim Berwanger. Jim is a local businessman with over 10 years experience in local news here in the Charlotte area. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. News, advertisement, whatever it's going on the air, it's got Jim Berwanger with it.
No, not all the time. Some of the time.
Next to Jim is Vilma Leake. Vilma is very active in the Democratic Party here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. She's also the president of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Association of Education, and she was also a candidate in 1996 for the County Commission. Next to Vilma is Rev Joe Chambers. Reverend Chambers is the senior pastor at Paul Creek Ministries here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And next to him is Cheryl Jones. Cheryl was a candidate in 1996 for the North Carolina State House. And she's also very active in local politics, especially on the conservative side of the realm, and very active with any issues that may come up, especially if it's being addressed through taxation.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening.
I think our first topic is one that has caught a lot of attention just recently, and I'm sure in the following months will definitely catch a lot of attention, and it's the proposed increase in school bonds, or new bonds, that the school system says that it will need to operate within the near future. The amount that I've heard is plus or minus $600 million. And I'd like to start off with Vilma. Vilma, you've been very active in different roles here in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. I was under the impression that several years ago when we had the bond proposal and then finally a solution, which was, I think, about 20%, 25% less than what was actually proposed, that a lot of the problems with the schools as far as growth, upgrade, things of that type had been taken care of. Why are they asking for 3 times as much in just a few years?
I believe, Mike, that number one, that we are looking at the problems that we are confronted with, old buildings, and we are trying to bring those buildings up to requirement by the state and by our local standards. One of the concerns I have is that we had a bond issue in '93, how those funds were spent and making sure that those funds have been spent equitably across the district. And as we have seen, those funds have not been spent equitably across the district. And I'm hoping that the committee that will be responsible for taking care of buildings will do just what it says it's going to do. The county commissioner has given to the school board the asking that it asked for, the first time, I think, in the history of this community that we have been able to get what we have actually asked for to educate our children. The concern I have is to make sure that those funds go directly to educating the children, making sure those buildings are properly equipped, making sure not just a given section of the community, but all of our schools, so that every child in this community can get an equitable and a quality education. Also with that process is to make sure that we have qualified teachers in the building. Young teachers, middle-aged teachers, and senior teachers. We need a spectrum across the board. I'm finding across the district that this district is removing senior teachers, and we need those persons with experience to help to give the holistic aspect of educating our children. And I hope that in this process that this is what we're going to do with those funds and make sure that every building is equipped properly, as it should have been all along. It's negligence on the part of the school board that it has not done what it was supposed to do, and that is mandating the money, making sure that every child does receive a quality education.
What did they do with that money, the last amount that they used then?
Well, part of those funds...
They didn't just throw it away, I assume.
No, all of the money has not been spent. That's the concern that the community should have, and we would have as a community to look at the funds that have already been spent, making sure it says to the public that the school board is responsible for sharing with the community how those funds are spent, where those funds are spent, who makes the decision where and how those funds are spent is most important. But we have not yet used all of the monies for '93 that we had in the bond issue. So there needs to be a greater accountability on the part of the school board and the city, making sure that those funds are spent properly.
Cheryl, I know that you were very active in Citizens for Effective Government, and a lot of individuals myself included, was very surprised when your organization, which was a very grassroots organization, came through and basically defeated the initial bond proposal. How do you feel about 600 million new bonds, and do you think there'll be any opposition to that?
I would hope there'd be an opposition. I really feel that that's really too high. I think Tom Bush has already come out and said that's way too high. That's going to put us so far in debt in this county. I think somebody quoted a saying that these children today, this bond will not be paid off till they're, I think, close to 50, that they're in school today. I mean, this is ludicrous. I think we should pay as we go, and we're not doing that. We haven't been accountable. The school board has not been accountable. Why continue to give them excessive amount of money when they have not proven themselves that they are accountable? I think this is questions we really have to ask. I think it's far too much money. I think our taxes are going to go zooming up. We have not had the accountability. I don't mind. I want our children to learn. I want our children to have every school to be the best school, to be equal. But until we have accountability, the bottom line, we don't hand a child a blank check for $1 million, say, now spend it wisely. It isn't going to happen. And I feel that the school board has been that negligent in the way that they dealt with the money in the past years. How many years have been 20 years? Some of these schools have gone without any maintenance, upkeep. This is ludicrous. They should have been fixing these schools all along, and why haven't they? They keep using the schools for other things. And that to me is a disgrace. We can't keep giving money to the school board. They have not proven themselves. And I'm saying give them a certain amount, but make them accountable for every dollar.
How much money is still left from the bond issue in '93?
I'm not sure,
In
sir.
the millions.
Probably so. But my concern is, as I heard you talk about the accountability of the school board must be, and I think I said that previously,
Right.
must be accountable
But
to
they
this
haven't been.
community for the funds that's there. The other thing you made a statement as related to making sure that the school board has done its job in equipping, repairing the buildings.
Exactly.
We have found that the school board has not
Not at
done
all.
what it is supposed to have
Abysmal
done.
failure.
But that's not our responsibility now is to make them be accountable for what they did not do in the past. And we look at members of the school board who have been there 12 years or more, so they should look and see what they have not done and make sure that
And
they
that's
be held
why
accountable.
term limits are critical. I'm sorry, but that's why we have these problems. We need to get we need to get new people in there consistently to come up with better ideas. We need to get people who are fresh, who are going to be accountable, and we get the same people in year after year and nothing is done. This is the mess we're in right now.
But let me say this, people vote. The public has a right to elect those persons. They have voted those persons in. It is our responsibility then to hold them accountable for what they're supposed to do.
We're supposed
you
to,
and
but they
all of us.
haven't.
You are
But we
equally
haven't.
as responsible as I am. You need to attend the school board meetings and make sure that the school board is doing what it's supposed to do. How many meetings have you attended
I have
before you
gone to
began to talk about the negatives of the board? That's my concern, and I hear you say that.
This is my problem. County Commission gives the money to the school board. I think they should make the school board accountable. That is their, I mean, when they had all this amount of chunk of money over, they just say, well, now do anything you want with it. It's your money. No, I'm sorry.
No.
I'd have to stop that. I'd have to say, I want accountability. If you don't have accountability, you're not getting a dime. I want to see that you're using this money. And if they had done this years ago, we wouldn't be in the shape that we're in. These schools wouldn't be in the shape that they're in.
The county is holding the school board accountable. It provides the fund, and there is itemized means by which those funds are supposed to be spent. But the law of North Carolina gives the school board that right to spend those funds. Once those funds are given to the school board, it is the responsibility then of the school board to spend those monies as it has stated. The county cannot come in and say, you must and you've got to spend it this way. It provides the funds, but it does not dictate how it's going to be spent.
One way or the other, it's going to be an increase in taxes somewhere along the way to have to come up with $600 million. Jim, as a homeowner and also as a parent with young children in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system, which way do you go on this? Do you think it's more important to address the bonds for the schools themselves, or do you think it's, on the other side, it's making a living and being able to pay your taxes, your bills, and everything else?
Well, that's just it, isn't it, Mike? I mean, my daughter goes to a very nice school, Irwin Avenue. It's been remodeled in the last 10 years. And,
That's 5 years.
5 years, yeah. And it's a wonderful school. It's a city school. It's well integrated. It seems to be one of the working examples of a school that, you know, is benefiting from Murphy's magnet school system has become our neighborhood school because every other kid in our neighborhood goes to it, and it's only a 15-minute drive. So that's a success story. As far as putting $600 million bond issue on the ballot, that's a total disaster. That will never pass, no matter what kind of power you put behind that. There's nobody that's going to persuade the voters of Mecklenburg County to approve that.
Do you think they're
That was the end of Dr. Murphy, as
Do you
far as
think
I'm
that's-
concerned. Was
do you
the
think that's what
$300
they're
million bond
purposely
package.
trying to do?
They passed a $200 million package, and then he left. But he tried with all his power to get a large bond package through and failed miserably.
Do you think maybe they're purposely putting a large amount on there so that maybe they'll get, they're asking for 6, but they want 3?
Somebody will
You know?
take the heat.
It's
Somebody is going to
possible
get
that
nailed.
that's their technique, is trying to start for a higher amount and then thinking. But I think we have to send them a message saying, look, we are working hard for our dollars. We're just trying to keep one home. We're trying to keep our home. And it is a struggle. I have a small business. And I can tell you, I want our children very much educated. They're our future, and if we don't educate them properly, they're in trouble for the next generation. And we need to do this, but we also, we are struggling. There are so many taxes out there. We are being overloaded with taxes. And why should the property owner have to come up again and bail everybody out? We have bailed out people to the last degree. I think it's time for responsibility, and they have to show some responsibility. And that's my personal opinion, and they haven't done it.
I'd like to switch to another topic real quick so we don't run out of time, because this is one, as I said, it's definitely going to catch a lot of attention in the next few months, especially when they begin to actually say, let's go ahead and borrow the money, would be the Citizens Review Board. I guess over the last 2 or 3 years, there have been several questionable shootings, depending on who you talk to, of individuals, and the ones that seem to have caught either the attention of the media or the ones that had the most skepticism about them were the ones involving Afro-Americans who were shot by white police officers. And this
You really haven't had the reverse, Mike. There hasn't been a whole lot of white, people shot by black officers in the last 5 years.
Well, okay, we'll say all of them. So, I'm not sure. I know that the ones that seem to have, that I've
That
noticed
has
and ones that have
created
been
the
on the...
community's concern
Yeah,
about
sort of
the
a
procedure
galvanization on that
and the
particular issue.
process in which it's been handled. I'm in support of a Citizens Review Board. If this board is going to have the responsibility of actually looking at the process and the procedure in which incidents have taken place, it will not take the place of the police department and its ruling process, but it will give the community an opportunity to be a part of what's going on and have a feeling of buying into the investigation of situation that transpires between black, white, or whatever the minority might be, an incident
Will
might
they
be.
have any real power, though? I mean, is it mainly just
No.
like a PR type?
They'll make recommendations.
And
They'll make recommendations, but it does give you a feeling of belonging when you can sit back and think that you've had some process into it. And this is what the community has been asking from the Thompson killing, from not the very first one that has created a lot of attention was beginning with the Thompson killing and moving on up to the Cooper killing. So it means that this community is asking the leaders, the politicians in this community, allow us to be a part of what's going on.
Is some of this mainly just a concern that we don't trust our police officers, and maybe this is a larger theory? Because it used to be that a police officer had a different position or respect in the community, and maybe this is just saying we don't trust the police anymore, and that we need to go in and have someone that we do trust, which is everyday citizens, hopefully.
Oh, go right ahead.
I'm in favor of the review board. I don't think there's any damage can come of the right people on a review board. But I think it's very much unfortunate that in these cases where these deaths have occurred, it was so evident that the persons who were killed were either involved in very criminal activity or was acting in such a fashion as the officer really had no other choice. And so I am very much in favor of our police. I believe they do a great job. I think it's unfair when white policemen have to take it on the chin because there happens to be a black person who's killed. Because in any of those cases, I think anybody looking at them would know there was no thought of color involved in those killings. Those officers wasn't looking for a black man. If it had been a black officer, he wouldn't have been looking for a white man. I don't think we have that kind of officers in this city. I respect them highly. I think they've done a great job. While I'm in favor of the review, I think the basis out of which it's come has been filled with a lot of emotions around it.
Yeah, but the review board can help the police also. It's a two-way street here.
Exactly.
It can help explain. They're having a public relations problem also because people don't. I think the cop in the street is relatively well respected. I think what they're having a problem with is they're being judged by their peers inside their same organization. That causes distrust. If they have another review board that doesn't cost a lot of money, it's filled with impartial people, it helps both sides. It really does.
Well,
I
when
think
we
most
talk-
of us are in favor of that.
Yes, we are in favor of the Citizen Review Board, but based upon a couple of statements that the Reverend made here, that the policeman was acting as he or she should have acted, we never know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. They've been trained, supposed to have been properly trained to respond in a given way, and we would hope that this is what would have happened. But we cannot prejudge, we cannot say that that person was a criminal, so then it gives us that right then to shoot that individual because of his or her record. And I hope that's not what we are saying to the police department, because we come upon one who does have a record, that we're not supposed to provide equal protection for that individual. Out of those killings, I think the community is saddened because of that, but it takes incidents of those natures, of those kinds sometimes, to pull us together, to let us understand that there is a problem, and there is a problem with the police department. Has been, and hopefully that this will help to correct the negatives that given people feel about the police department. Every policeman cannot be judged as one or two individuals within that department, and I would hope that we would not.
So I think we all agree that it is a positive
Of course,
for the
yes,
community as
yes.
a whole. I do agree. I think there was one major concern, and I think that for the individuals that were on the city council and other positions that questioned, especially the police department, is they were concerned that it may be used as a sounding board for individuals who had a problem with the police in general, and that they were
I would
concerned
just
that,
have
you know,
an axe to grind.
exactly, exactly, and they didn't want to have a situation like that developing. Hopefully, well, I shouldn't say hopefully, but unfortunately, I'm sure that their services will have to be used in the future, and hopefully, they will make a wise choice that'll be very positive for the city as a whole. I did want to return to something that is very important, and it's downtown development. It seems like there's a lot of growth going
That's when
on.
the music's supposed to hit.
I've heard some of the most ambitious approaches to what downtown Charlotte's supposed to look like in 3 years. By the year 2000, there's an article in the Charlotte Observer just recently praising
Yes.
the what's always been referred to in a negative connotation as the downtown crowd. Those people who have either the power to possess money and direct it, or either have a lot of money themselves, and they pretty much direct how downtown will look, development of it, what will come here, what will not come here, and how do you all feel about
We've got
that?
to look at the Charlotte Observer as being very politically animated. They are utterly in favor of the downtown group and absolutely opposed to what they would call the Gang of Five or any other group that would oppose the big power moves of downtown. So that was a political move trying to set the tone for the coming election and try to build some prestige for the downtown group. I think that's very sad. It shows the biasness of the Charlotte Observer, but it could very well backfire in their face, because when you go to holding up the Tatans downtown, what was that right word they used?
Tartan?
Titans.
Titans, right? The Titans downtown.
The Gang of
I don't think there's many of us who pay the taxes are much in favor of that kind of thing being thrown at us.
Well, they've definitely done a lot of development. It seems like just recently a lot of the development has been on the north part of Tryon Street, which Nations Bank owns a major concern, and Earl Village has
Exactly.
literally
Isn't that amazing?
disappeared.
But look at the
Yeah.
tax base, though. But look at that tax base. That's where our greatest amount of taxation comes from, within the downtown area. We would hope that in the process of their planning for our community, that we be a part of that process, that the little taxpayer, those of us who are the little taxpayers, would not sit back and afford those who are in the upper economic bracket would make those decisions. Do we really need that growth downtown? What advantages is it going to have to all of us as citizens in this community?
We know as a city we can't afford growth out of town. It costs a lot of money to run sewer systems out to Matthews into the outer belt.
That's true.
We can't afford that. We need to get back to a density of population. I believe it should be done with normal economic impulses guiding it. It doesn't need to be.
Exactly,
It doesn't need to be
exactly.
driven by any outside machine, at least not government. But if 5 private guys, which I'm not sure if it's 5, how do we know it's not the gang of 8?
Are you,
There's
saying
3
that-
private
They
ones
might have-
here, yeah.
are you saying that we shouldn't promote growth that's out,
No.
but we should promote the growth that's right in the
Let's
density part of
rebuild,
town?
let's rebuild the inner
agree.
city.
Why not let
Let's-
the,
I don't agree.
Let's
I mean,
rebuild
we
the inner
should
city.
not.
We need to rebuild the inner city.
We've seen the
Let's think
mistakes
of
of a
what
lot of
Charlotte
other-
was years ago. That, you know, that's, I'm not saying we
I'm
should
not
go back.
against that.
That's not
Okay,
gonna
let's
happen.
go
That's
back.
natural.
I think what Jim is saying here is that perhaps Charlotte, and whether you're against growth or in favor of growth, growth is going to occur in an economy that is
Yes,
very...
and
We're all in
growth.
favor of it.
Do you think maybe Charlotte's just going through the experience that all other cities, that after a while, after you build out as far as you can, you start
Then we just
building
come-
up?
go-
And that maybe, I've noticed that one thing in particular, and I think we spoke about this on one of the other shows, is that you have a lot more of apartments going downtown, where you're actually going to have an influx of people living there and not just working there. And is that what you're referring to
I'm just saying
as
that a dense
development along those
population
lines?
pays more taxes than people living on 2
Exactly.
acres of land,
Exactly.
requiring the same amount of services.
He's right about that.
I'm glad. I think what's happening, a phenomenon now, is cities that got bypassed in the last 20 years of so-called growth and development. They maybe missed an outer belt or didn't get in on the federal funds, like Asheville.
Yes.
Didn't get an outer belt. It's a small city. Is now becoming probably one of the nicest places to live because they didn't see their downtown area sucked dry by the development that an outer belt does. And Charlotte will benefit over Atlanta in the fact that we only have one, and there won't be any more federal money to build another
Let's
ring
hope
like
not.
they did in Atlanta. There's several rings. I mean, you can go all the way out to 3 if you want. Well, that just sucked everything out of the city.
Outside of the city.
I think we'll benefit from having one small outer belt. I think that economically, the money, you'll see a return to the density of population in town, but it will never be directed. You'll never see it well directed from the so-called Gang of 5. They will build their coliseums, if they exist. I don't even
The
believe
sports
they
arena,
exist.
the sports arena,
Things that they feel that would help
the
people
downtown.
get there.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they will. If they build that coliseum, my property values look good. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Okay.
If they
Very
build them
good.
out in the middle, like what Robichek calls South Tryon and 353rd Street, you know, that's not going to help anybody in the inner city.
Do you think that any of the threats that, and one in particular comes into mind because he constantly holds it over our head, is that if you don't go along with the development for the Hornets that I'm in favor of, and that would be that downtown multiplex.
Sports
It's not
arena.
just an arena, it is big.
Complex.
It is from everything from daycare to shopping to various sports items. If you don't give me what I want or close to it, then I will leave. Do you
Well,
think that would
well,
happen? And
well.
Wouldn't that be a regression of this prestigious of the city? And
Afford
actual
him the
growth?
opportunity to make that decision.
The citizens ought to be the ones to decide how their money is spent.
Exactly.
Right.
Amen
Not,
to that.
not
Right.
our
Well,
friend.
let's use a case in point
or
there.
anybody else.
In Seattle, they decided to spend $1 billion of taxpayer money.
Are you kidding?
Yes, to build a stadium for a guy that already has $1 billion of money. Now George Shinn comes along and
That's
says,
lunacy.
we've got this great deal. We're going to charge the city maybe $40 million worth of tax money to get a $200 million complex. It's not a bad deal.
Well, let me say this. On the way here, the roads coming here on Independence were awful, simply awful. They're breaking up. It's just a mess. I would rather have my roads repaired well, have nice roads. I have many other things that we need. We need more police in this city. I don't feel safe in this city. And another thing, if they don't address the parking situation downtown, I don't know how they're going to get anybody down there. It is just too expensive to park.
I think downtown is obvious they can do one thing real well, and that would be build up. And
Have
you
no
can get on
problems
any
with
building
that.
in Charlotte, look across the city, and you can see the major development from the main businesses, the main office buildings. There'll be parking decks, and then all of a sudden they turn into these lots.
Cheryl, they
These
said the
one-way
same
lots.
thing about
Go 10 on top of
Erickson
each other.
Stadium now, that there's no parking. It'll be a total nightmare. Where was the nightmare? There has been no nightmare.
Well, not so far, but
Just
when
been
you get more
enjoying.
events down there, where are you going to put the cars? I mean, like the convention center, it is a nightmare to
Well, they're
find
not
parking
going to
down
happen
there.
at once.
But what I'm saying is, no, I see what you're, I applaud you. You're right, Jim. It would be good to have downtown to develop, as long as it's private.
But your Gang of 5 is private.
Well,
Exactly.
but they always want to somehow get the public to fund everything, and I'm tired of that. We should not have to fund anything. If they want to come down here, George Shin knows what, 12 homes, 13, he wants another 5 or 6 homes. Come on, give me a break.
If he can afford them, though, I said let him get his homes.
Exactly.
I say yes, absolutely.
I wish I could afford
But I'm
that,
saying if he can afford this, he can afford to
Could
get
we move to
investors
lunch
to
with a
come in.
friend?
We'll get
Oh,
there
yeah.
in just a minute. We are
Yeah.
getting close on time. I did want to bring up one point
He
because
can afford to get partnerships to come in here and build the Coliseum.
I did want to get
Absolutely.
to one point, and this was something that initially I thought it had sort of been resolved or was going out on the wash, and that was the situation over the county commission's vote on restricting some of the art that is coming into the city, mainly homosexual art, gay art, or art in general that I sort of saw that they didn't approve of as a whole. I know that about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, there was a play that came to Charlotte, Angels in America.
Right.
And Mr. Chambers, I know that you and your organization were very upset about that because there was a scene of nudity, male nudity.
Oh,
in
it
that.
was much worse than that.
I didn't actually see the play, so I'm not sure exactly.
That was mild compared to what was in that particular
Were you
play.
surprised how that developed into
Oh, no,
the
I
situation
told
now?
them back then that they were laying their own trap. That what they were doing was playing into the hands of the conservative movement in this nation to restrict the funding of any art that does not meet a good, clear moral standard for a community. The Short Observer tried to tell us, no, 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 you know, the majority of the people are for this kind of thing. Well, the votes have proven since then it was not, the majority of the community is not for it. That we do not want our money spent on questionable art of that nature or anything else that helps to destroy the morals of the community. And so I think it's been normal. It's going to get tighter. The election, I think, this fall is going to be very much in the conservatives' favor with the city council. I think that it's been grand, and we've made some progress, and we're readdressing issues that have to do with the moral values of this community, and no community can build on a long run that doesn't address its moral standards and retain some kind of values.
It's called, Michael, it's called a good taste. There's a line to draw about tasteless things. In a lot of societies, they don't have it. I think that there is a line, and I think they clearly crossed the line.
Well,
It's a matter of opinion. I'm sitting here almost wanting to cut across what you're saying, but I respect each of you greatly and everybody at this sitting here. But I have a concern in the manner in which we have attacked individuals and persons in this community. We have a right to make a decision as individuals. We cannot, and as the county commissioner has done in its efforts to disregard individuals' choices. It's a right of choice.
That's just
If I
use of
want to,
words.
excuse me, sir, if I want to see a play, I have that right to do it. Doesn't mean that
Pay
my
your own
morals are
way.
in
If the city,
Pay
if
your
the
own way.
city or county are not paying for it.
allow me to do that if I wish to.
Pay your
When
own
we
way.
talk, exactly, sir. When we talk about the lifestyle of individuals, when we talk about funds, taxes, your taxes is not set aside. Conservative money is not over here, and those of us who want to make a decision over here. Tax money is put in a pot,
Thelma?
and we make sure that those funds are spent appropriately.
Government is
But I
not in the
cannot
business.
sit here and allow you to say the negatives about people and what's presented. We make choices.
We're not talking about people, we're
We
talking about
make
values.
Say
choices.
anything negative. If anybody said
We
anything,
make
it was
choices.
Lloyd Shear calling people
I
neo-Nazis.
think the drastic thing,
Jim?
I think
Wow,
the important thing
yeah.
to do is just get rid of the pot. That's what they're trying to say. Don't
yes.
draw any line.
You mean the whole
Exactly.
pot?
Right,
Exactly.
Yes.
but it's dump the whole thing.
Entertainment is a luxury item that should not be in government. I'm sorry.
Art wants
It
to go
should
back to the pit.
Our
Yeah.
children and the future of our community is dependent upon moral values.
Exactly.
Homosexuality is absolutely a crime in the state of North Carolina. It should not be promoted in plays. It should not be promoted in anything without tax money. If people want to promote it and do it on their own, nobody's going to try
I don't
to
believe
stop
that people
it.
are promoting a lifestyle.
Oh, yes, they were.
I can't.
Oh, Velma,
I don't
get-
think
Plus they were
so.
promoting film.
Wake up.
I
You
don't
know,
think-
we
but
in
you
the
make the
government here,
choice.
just
We
recently
make
in
the
this government,
choice.
you and I have put a book out called S&M. We are sponsoring wacky things. I mean, we're having
I made a lot of
common
money
sense.
off that book.
Yeah.
But hear me clearly. Make sure that we
I think you guys
allow
are arguing
people to
different
make.
things.
You
Well,
think
I
so?
understand what you're saying.
Well,
You're
people
right.
can make their choices.
Right.
Yes.
But we don't we don't fund it with our tax money.
That's it. That's the bottom
That's all
line.
we're saying. Don't fund this filth with our tax money. If you want to live like that, we're not going to invade your bedroom.
Would you all agree, and this is the one point that sort of bothered me, is that there were certain laws in the South in general, and really all of the United States, that prohibited people of color or people, Catholics, foreigners, various other items. They excluded certain groups of people for 1 or 2 or particular 6
That's not a good comparison, Mike.
Well, let me make my point.
Okay.
If you're giving public funds, and if from the public in general, and it's all going into a pot for community arts or whatever, and you say, well, certain ones are not going to be allowed. What have we said that Catholic certain items that are Catholic in nature aren't going to be shown, and ones that are Afro-American in general is not
Have you
going
ever
to be
seen
shown.
any public Catholic art?
But
Well, they used to.
that's not a fair argument.
Well, if
The bottom
you're
line
making a
is
distinction,
government should not be in the business of entertainment or
but
luxury items.
if the
I'm sorry.
homosexual community enjoys a certain play that has a theme that happens to show someone is gay, then isn't that basically just the obvious
But see,
point?
nobody's argued against them having that play for their people.
But it's the
We've
funding.
argued against doing it in a
Public
public
funding.
building or paying for it with public dollars.
But isn't that discrimination based on that one
No,
perspective of the
they're
individual?
not discriminating.
I mean, I can, if they wanted to say we're going to wipe out
No.
funding for the
No,
arts in
that's
general,
not
I can
discrimination.
support that.
that's
But
not
when you
discrimination.
Let's call it discrimination. Let's say indeed it is. But all of us discriminate. Every time you ride down the highway, you decide whether you're going to go in the right lane or the left lane. And your life depends on making that discrimination. All of
But you
life
make
is a
your choice.
discrimination. All of life is choices.
That's right. It's a choice.
We know, and there's been much documentation of the end results of an immoral lifestyle. Why should we support that in any way with tax money, with plays, with anything else? That's why we really need to get out of the arts business. Period.
Well, I
Whether
would
it's
have
good
no
art or
problem
bad
with
art.
that. But individuals used to say, like some of the Academy Award movies that came out with Sidney Poitier, I think it was it Splendor in the Grass? A lot of people wouldn't even show that because they considered that
That was a
to be
racist time, though, Mike. I mean,
That was a racist.
maybe that's what we're
exactly.
living in now to some degree.
No, I don't believe that.
Hey, there's one thing about
Splendor in the
society,
Grass
it
was
moves
not-
in
wait
one
a minute,
direction
Mike,
or the
Splendor in the
other.
Grass was not a government-backed picture.
No.
That was
Exactly.
privately
But
funded.
Yeah,
I'm saying
bingo.
the same type of situation it was.
And people made a choice to see it.
If you're talking about good taste, what if I have children and I'm going by and they're shooting up drugs and everybody's encouraging shooting up drugs? I don't want my children around this. This is not type of
I
behavior.
don't think anybody
I
is
want them.
encouraging. They give a
But
lifestyle.
what
That's
I'm
why I don't
saying,
want us to even say
it
that.
crosses the line, in my opinion, that I don't want to push that. I don't want my children around them. I don't want them to think that drug is the thing that we should be doing.
So
is
everybody who's
injecting
on
drugs.
drugs are those persons who've been around people who were on drugs. Is that what you're saying?
I just don't want, if they're shooting on the streets and they're having a big to-do and it's okay, I don't want my children exposed to that.
But
no.
that's your choice not to allow them, afford them that
As long, if
opportunity.
public is helping them, then no,
I do
I'm
think
not
we're
gonna
getting
go along
close,
with
and I know, Mr. Chambers, you wanted to make one more statement, so we will finish up on that one.
Well, it is very important that we understand. I was on the Arts Task Force. I listen to people who speak from the artistic community. They believe, the artistic community on the very liberal left end, believe that their calling is to challenge the morals and the commitments and the standards of the community. As long as they've got that kind of commitment and confidence in what they are to do, we cannot fund them. They just have to pay their own way.
I think we'll all agree on one thing, and I agree with you on one point in particular. It will be a big issue in the coming election,
Yes.
and I do think it'll decide some of the county seats, both in the conservative, Democrat, Republican,
Yes.
and the more moderate, liberal districts. I think it'll be a very interesting
That's the place
election
for it to be
this year
decided.
and next year.
Exactly.
I agree
By
with
the
you there.
voters and the
By the
And
voters.
I will also, I'd like to thank everyone for being here, and it was a very